Hello everyone. Hello everyone. My name is Mutunrayo Adejoke Balogun, and I will be presenting to you today about the Indigenous activists in Canada. I'm a student of social service work at Seneca at York, which is located on the Indigenous land of Canada. I acknowledge the Indigenous land of Canada. I respect and honor everything they stand for, everything they believe in. My lecturer is Camille Glass. Today, I will be continuing the introduction by letting you know that Indigenous people of Canada include First Nation, Inuit, Métis. There are more than 500 Indigenous nations with distinguished culture, languages, and tradition in Canada. Residential school cause a lot of trauma and cultural genocide in Canada. Educational disparity persists, impacting Indigenous people's life. Addressing educational disparity is essential, a very, very essential for reconciliation. Education is a tool for empowerment and social change. These are put together by Ashbal and Ziem 2020. The current state of Indigenous education are funding disparity between Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, lack of culturally relevant curriculum and teaching practice, high dropout rates and low academic achievements, limited access to post-secondary education opportunities, ongoing impact of residential school on Indigenous educations, efforts to incorporate Indigenous knowledge and perspective in education. These are said by Archibald and Ziem 2020. The Indigenous education-led initiatives are land-based learning and traditional practice, incorporating Indigenous language and culture into the curriculum, community-led education initiatives, Indigenous-led teacher training and professional development, supporting Indigenous students, success and retentions, advocating for Indigenous-led education governance by Bohio 2022. The Indigenous activists in education are Cindy Blackstock, advocating for equitable funding for Indigenous education. Rai Morin is the director of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Dr. Mary Baste advocates for Indigenous language revitalization and Indigenous knowledge systems. Senator Murray Sinclair, the former chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Dr. Werner St. Dennis advocates for Indigenous-led education and culturally responsive teaching. Sheila Kotmek advocates for Indigenous students' success and well-being in post-secondary education. All these are by Bokyo 2022. The challenges facing Indigenous educations are lack of political will, resistance to change, ongoing effects of residential school on Indigenous educations, lack of funding and resources for Indigenous schools, shortage of Indigenous teachers and educators, limited access to post-secondary education opportunities, colonial curriculum and teaching practices, stereotyping and systematic discrimination against Indigenous students. These are by Ashbald and Ziem 2020. Successful model of Indigenous education are Six Nation Polytechnic, combining Indigenous knowledge with Western academic. Maori medium education, teaching core subjects in Maori language. First Nation University of Canada, Indigenous-led post-secondary institutions. Nunavut Civil Servant providing cultural education and workforce training. Tekora Kopapa Maori led primary and secondary schools. Nisgar Elementary Secondary School, incorporating Nisgar language and culture into curriculum. This is put together by Wegbula 2020. The importance of Indigenous education to promote cultural preservation and revitalization, to address the impact of residential school and systematic discrimination, to empower Indigenous students and communities, to build a stronger relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, to incorporating diverse perspective and knowledge system into the educations, to fostering reconciliation and creating a more equitable society that will benefit everyone. This is by Willa 2020. And in conclusion, the Indigenous education is vital to reconciliation efforts and more equitable future for everyone. The Indigenous knowledge and perspective have much to offer all students and society at large. Successful model of Indigenous education can provide guidance for developing culturally responsive education system. And addressing the challenge facing Indigenous education requires a sustained commitment to reconciliation and systematic change. Non-Indigenous people have a responsibility to learn and to know and to support the Indigenous education, including education and more. Indigenous education is a crucial part of addressing historical and ongoing injustice and promoting healing and empowerment for Indigenous people. We all need to contribute positively into this nation we have and to support the Indigenous people. Thank you for listening.